The Catholic Morning Show.
Lots happening in the month of June, of course, dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. You're going to want to stay with us all day long, all month long, as we highlight some of those things that will be taking place, not only locally, but, of course, nationally, as the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops prepare to consecrate the United States to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And we'll be praying right alongside them here. And you can join us here on Iowa Catholic Radio. I want to turn to our first guest of the day. And I want to say that this probably speaks right to my heart, especially here on the Feast of St. Justin Martyr, a book that from Saint Thomas Aquinas that very intimidating to me, but we have someone on who might be able to break it down and make it a little bit easier for an infant philosopher like I am. Welcoming you to the show, author of the book, Adele Gulick. Good morning, Adele.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's a beautiful morning. It's the start of a new week, start of a new month, and a start for an opportunity for anybody to pick up and begin again. And so I want to say thanks for, again, joining us here, and tell us a little bit about, give listeners who may not have even a foundational understanding of St. Thomas Aquinas' masterpiece, we'll call it, of philosophy, the Summa Theologiae.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having me on. The Summa Theologiae was written, it is a massive theological text. It's also very beautiful. St. Thomas wrote it to clarify and clearly lay out important aspects and principles of the faith. So I've taken it down and summarized it off of like summary, and for just in a very approachable way for children. So it is a very light read and a very fun read, and sometimes you don't even have to read it, just looking at the different illustrations and talking about them with kids and seeing what they pick out is super fun.
So the St. Thomas Aquinas' work is something you're very familiar with, but why the thought around making it accessible for babies and maybe being one of the first books that they're exposed to?
I think it's beautiful to talk about our faith and to teach it to children at a young age, especially when there's so much confusion in our world and there's a lot of just books, baby books particularly, about all sorts of things that I find not very fruitful to read to children. So I think it's good at such a young age they're inspired to learn about different things, and they are very curious minds. And so to give them some principles of the Catholic faith just spark the interest of, hopefully digging into it later.
Well, as we said, a massive original work from St. Thomas Aquinas. But let's talk about the, how you went about. You've released part 2 of the series. Maybe first of all, how many series do you anticipate to create in order to simplify it for babies?
So there are 4. He breaks it down into 5 different parts, and he calls them Prima. And then we have a Prima Secunda, and that's this one that just came out. And then we have Secunda. So, and then we have a third book, and the third book that he wrote is split into 2. And I'll just cover the first part of that is the plan right now. So he had already separated it into 4 kind of sections, and then the last one isn't finished. So I just took his 4 sections, and then he also splits it up into different categories of questions. So we talk about the law, we talk about virtues or passions, we talk about the soul and the will. And so I took those, and then he has a bunch of questions underneath each of those sections, and summarized those under the main category. So he had definitely a lot of structure to his work already, and so it was kind of easy to just follow along his own structure and just keep the same kind of feel of the Summa. And I wanted to do that as well because I think his work and the way that he put it is very intelligent. And so I also left you can see in the baby board book, there'll be under each section, like under passions, it'll mark the question. So it's questions 22 to 48 in the Summa. So I left that in there as well because I thought it was a cool reference.
So so again, it was already sort of laid out for you in this structured way, but I still imagine there was some discernment or consideration to which things you were going to highlight and how you were going to make it again accessible for a young mind, if you will. And how did you kind of go through that process? Did you get some feedback, or was this something that you did sort of entirely on your own?
Yeah, it was a mix of both. I took extensive notes, and then I would just highlight which parts were the most important of matters of our faith, and then I would go over my notes again until I had found the most important of those notes, and then until I had just enough to kind of fit into each section, because there's only a few pages, so 2 spreads on each subject. So it did have to be condensed very much. So, and then I would send it to, I have a good friend, Father Austin, and I would send it to him and be like, where do you, get his feedback on that. And then I also have a sister who's a journalist as well, and so she'll sometimes give me my feedback as well. So there are some people that I'll throw it out to and just see what I've missed, or if I've missed anything, or if I should rephrase things. And so yeah, it's kind of a mix. I've definitely done extensive notes and compare it to the catechism and what I think is most important, especially for a child. Often it's pretty clear what can be expressed to a child, on the Trinity in the first book. There's only so much you can say. It's a very intense study on the Trinity, obviously. And so just keeping it very basic to lay an outline and introduction is more fruitful than trying to get into all these nitty little things and which words should we use to describe this theologically, and a lot of that kind of thing I've left out, because it's not going to be very helpful to try to explain that to a child.
I love it, and I love hearing the excitement and joy in your voice as we talk about this part 2 of the Summa for Babies. We're talking with Adele Gulick, and the second part in her series on the Summa Theologiae, Prima Secunda partis. Am I saying? I try not to try too much with Latin, because that's definitely not my strong suit either. But as we talk about this, this writing from the Summa Theologica, very ancient, but how is it still relevant to the world that we live in today?
I think primarily because it's talking about matters of the faith, and we can always study the matters of the faith, and they're so beautiful to deep dive into. And it's beautiful as well that we can still contemplate these matters and still have wonderful, fruitful conversations off of them. And so I think it will always be relevant to study and learn about the faith. And so this is just a fun, approachable way to introduce it to your child.
Well, intentionally or unintentionally, did you think about sort of schooling or teaching the parents alongside their children as they might share this with them?
It was more later on, after I was starting to read this and getting other people's feedback on it, that it was more the parents and some of the older siblings were like, "Oh wow, that's cool," and then they would have more deep conversations off of it. So I thought that was cool, and it wasn't necessarily what I set out to do, but it is a beautiful fruit of writing it.
So tell me, what is some of the feedback that you've gotten on part 1, as well as some of the early reactions to part 2?
I've got a lot of good feedback from family and friends, which is cool. The other day I was reading it, or my little brother, who is 5 turning 6, he pulled up the book to me because I was working on the next one. And so he sat next to me and he's flipping through it, and he was talking about the little things. And so it's definitely cool to see what caught his eye, and as he was just telling me the story of the Summa Theologiae. So I thought that was really beautiful. But yeah, I've gotten a fun story. A teenager boy was reading it because his family got it, and he's one of 12 or 11 kids, so he's definitely and they're a good, strong Catholic family. And so he was reading the book, just sitting on the couch and enjoying it and talking to his dad about it. So
What part of
Definitely got a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, I imagine you have, and it's exciting to be able to share this with our listeners as, again, a way if they haven't been exposed to the greater work, if you will, the work that you have done here. What part of the Summa has most impacted your life?
In particular, it was the section on passions, because he clearly shows that they are necessary. They're a beautiful gift from God. And I think that's important to remember, that they're not something you can just throw out, and we should use them to love God more, and we can use them to love God more. And so I thought that was a very balanced way of looking at them, and very helpful in your own life when you're overcoming sin and trying to grow in virtue and to turn your passions to push you towards God is a very beautiful mindset to have. So I love that section. But overall, in the Summa, it's really cool the way that Thomas Aquinas writes out these objections to our faith, and he allows them to be there, but also tries to find the strongest objection he can. And then he answers what the faith teaches. And I think that's really beautiful, because he's not just ignoring the other side. He's not ignoring any possible objection. He's allowing that space to be here is an argument against it. And then he will show you what the Catholic Church teaches on that. And so I think that is a beautiful way of addressing any problem, but specifically theology.
Adele, let our listeners know, again, the full title of Part 2, and then where they can get both books that are out now.
Yes, both books, the Summa Theologiae for babies, Prima Secunda Partis, is going to be on Tan Books website, as well as you can find it on Amazon. But it's easier and quicker to probably find it on Tan.
Yes, and for what's next? You said there. Are you working on Part 3 now?
Yes, I'm working on Part 3, and then there'll be Part 4.
Very good, very good. Well, Adele, anything else about this particular work that you'd like listeners to know or take away or to expect if they decide to pick up one or both books that are currently out and have an appetite, if you will, for Parts 3 and 4?
Yeah, it's super fun and approachable, so it doesn't need to be taken too seriously. Obviously, it's a very dense and heavy topic in the Summa Theologiae by Saint Thomas Aquinas, but this is a very fun, approachable way that anyone can enjoy and laugh at. So it's definitely very approachable and easy to read. You don't have to be scared to read it to your kid. It's just a fun book to have around.
Well, thank you so much for doing this work. I think this is just a brilliant idea, again, to not only introduce adults but children into this great work that has meant so much to our faith and I think to culture and society. Adele Gulick, author of the Summa Theologiae, the Summa for Babies. Again, Part 2 is now out, and you can find it, as she said, at Tan Books. We'll look forward to talking to you when the release of Part 3 comes out.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome.
Listen to the Catholic Morning Show weekdays at 7 a.m. Central on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, iowacatholicradio.com, or the Iowa Catholic Radio app.